It's Puncture City at Lakeside. Fernando Alonso is finally in the podium positions in third, and Lewis Hamilton takes the win and closes that points gap for the World Championship to Max Verstappen, who takes second. G'day there, my name is James Baldwin, and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we review the Qatar Grand Prix. And I'm joined, as always, by two very tired boys. It's Tommy T. G'day, mate.
G'day, how you doing?
Very well. And Campy, hello there, friend.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Yes, doing very well. Campy, who watched it live, and Tommy T, who looks like he's been camping under a bus for the past 7 days.
I watched it live too. It was rough.
Yes, big regret. Big regret.
Very, very rough this morning. Jeez, the alarm went off and I was like, no, what am I doing?
Well, I didn't watch it live, which suited me just fine, getting up still, though, at 10 to 4, just to watch it to roll into this big commit from you two lads. So massive thank you to you, and massive thank you to you for listening and watching. Look, it's great to have your company here. Very quickly, before we start talking about the Qatari Grand Prix, what I'd love for you to do, dear listener, all four of you, is if you could please share this podcast with a friend. If you've got another Formula One friend who loves the sport, or someone who's just watched the Netflix Drive to Survive series, you think they might enjoy it. We love doing this, and we're obviously going to have a better time if more people listen to it. So thank you to you for that. But also thank you to these two people for leaving a review of the podcast in the past week. I'll leave that to second, actually. I'm going to start with this one. Steelers Rock in the US. He says, easily the best. 5 stars. I subscribe to too many F1 podcasts. The one I never miss, and you should neither, is Lakeside Drive. They're well-informed, opinionated, and funny. Guys, when will you do a supercars podcast that Americans like me can ignore NASCAR forever? Massive thank you to you, Steelers Rock. Love that. And my favorite review, I should say, for the week is my favorite LeBron James podcast, 5 stars. I finally found an excellent LeBron James fan podcast. Their episode on his heroic 2020 bubble championship is a must listen. Also provides insightful discourse surrounding the Victorian government's handling of the pandemic and Daniel Andrews' inspiring leadership.
Oh, I've got one guess as to who that was. Very good review. Love that.
You'd be incorrect, actually, Campy, because I did say who did this on Instagram, and Tom did this. It wasn't Mark K.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, which is very very funny. But anyway, look, massive thank you for you, Tom, and to everyone who's left a rating and review. We really appreciate it. All right, well, Tom,
I'm looking forward to having a beer with you at some stage, mate, so I can tell you how wrong you are. And Mark, I'll put Mark in that category too. It'll be a lot of fun.
No surprises there about anything to do with Victoria. All right, let's talk, shall we now, about the television broadcast review. And when I say the television broadcast review, I mean probably the time about 5 minutes before the race started and about 5 minutes after the race ended. Tommy T, give us your thoughts about that period.
You are very correct. When it's a race like this, I time it to perfection. I'm like, I'll get formation lap, and that is it. I saw nothing. I saw absolutely nothing. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Campy. What did you see from the?
Well, look, I'll give my anthem review. What a horrible anthem! It was like the drum beat from the Imperial March and this horrible melody that went over it. And I'll tell you what, it was probably the worst anthem we've seen all year. Wow. I'll tell you what, though, David Beckham suit was looking on point. I'm getting married in March, and I need some suit ideas for the wedding, and I'm thinking that
bit of
that colour code was looking good. I can see myself looking a bit like Bex. Just need the chiseled jawline a bit. We'll be looking good.
Wow. Mate, have you not contacted Twiggy Forrest to see if R.M. Williams will bespoke make you a suit yet?
Oh, calm down, lads. It's just like, I'm a sucker for a rugby jumper. And I'm not wearing Gant, put it that way.
Wow, what a thing to start your week off with. I'm not wearing Gant.
It's like an
Wow.
old man brand. I bought my dad one of those shirts for his 60th and he threw it back at me and said, I'm not wearing that shit. I'm not old.
What
very
a
good.
this has turned into a clothing review.
It has.
Look, my biggest issue that I had with this circuit is that apparently this is the biggest attendance that Qatar's ever had. So 14 people came to watch the race.
Yeah.
And too many times the television director thought it a very good bloody idea to be very creative with his shots and go, yes, well, here comes Lewis Hamilton. I'll get some English fans standing here and I'll go, okay, 3, 2, 1. And then you just jump up and down going, yay. And then they hold that shot for quite a while. And then nothing else gets seen. And then some on-track passing happens, but we're too busy watching the same people that have been cued to jump up and down. Guys, I don't care. Don't care about the crowds. We've survived without a crowd for the longest time the last 2 years. Don't try and make it be more exciting or bigger than it actually is. No one cares about the crowd here in Qatar. The crowd don't even care about the crowd in Qatar if you go back and look at most of the shots. No good in the bin with that. That's at least 1 out of 10 performance for me. Don't be creative with Formula One. The cars are good looking enough.
Yes.
It reminds me of when the V8 supercars went to Abu Dhabi and there was literally no one anywhere on the track at any time.
No, I think one positive we can take from it is they took the book out of Singapore and we had some sparks flying everywhere. Everyone was running their chin plates and stuff very, very low. Yeah. Those do they just
what else
ask
do you
the
take out
teams
of
to
Singapore, by the way? Just book? Just a single book that we've taken out of Singapore.
That's it. That's the only thing. But, I mean, it worked out well when we had all those punctures, which I'm sure we'll get to as well, because sparks everywhere look good at night.
Yes.
That is a positive.
Look, in terms of commentary, though, Brundle, as always, very good, picking up the pieces. Crofty was all over the shop, saying different things. Apparently, Sergio Perez
were you watching? It was fun.
No, it wasn't. He wasn't at all. I've literally just watched it with fresher eyes.
Yeah, we were asleep,
and ears. And he was saying all kinds of incorrect things just about who had replaced who and Sergio Perez replacing Max Verstappen at Red Bull at one point. I'm like, pardon? What did you just say? Anyway, it was no good for me. Tommy T, what's your score out of 10 for the bits that you watched?
2. Let's give it a
2 out of 10. Yeah, I agree.
It was woeful.
I agree. No good. Even Campy. Do you want to protest Campy? Do you want to add a point or two?
Look, no.
I wonder if we're going to have a higher score in 2 weeks' time, but you'd have to have a track for that, so we'll see.
Well, yeah. It's very dependent. The one thing that I will give 10 out of 10 for is that all Qatar was really interested in doing was talking about the FIFA World Cup next year at a Formula One event. Guys, no one cares. Wrong event. The only thing that is relevant is David Beckham wearing a nice suit that Campy now wants to buy. So that's it.
Wow.
Well done.
I'd love to see that side by side.
F1. All right, well, let's get into talking about the race overview as a whole. We'll start at the very beginning. Campy, we did end up having penalties for this double-waved yellow incident that happened in the final lap of qualifying.
Yeah. Sounds like there was a rogue steward on the front straight who was waving some yellow flags. So if there's waved yellows anywhere, you got to slow down. Do I like it? Not really. Was the whole thing a bit of a shambles and a bit of a stuff up? Absolutely. But hey, they're the rules. So we've got these rules for a reason. So, I mean, you may as well enforce them when someone breaks the rules. Whether you saw it or not, it was an accident. Well, tell that to, some of the bad incidents that we've had on track in recent years. So I think the stewards had to give it. I don't like that Simon's got a 3 place and Max got a 5 place. It just doesn't really... look, they had a chance to get it right really easy. Just give everyone that was on track at the time who didn't slow down a 5-second penalty, but they chose 3 drivers in the end. Still don't know why Norris didn't get one. Anyway, look, that's just life, isn't it? I don't think it really mattered in the end result of the race.
No.
It's a bit like Hamilton last week getting a 25-place grid penalty. It didn't matter where that guy started. He was coming like a freight train and getting the win anyway. So, yeah.
Interesting to see one rogue steward. And, of course, look, you can't mess around with the yellow flag rules. It is a safety thing, can you? But, in terms of track management, people management on the track, maybe that's another issue. But, Campy, I think you explained it really well yesterday in terms of, how many seconds it can take for that kind of bit of information to get through.
Yeah, we should be stewards for the Oz Grand Prix.
God.
What could possibly go wrong?
How good would that be? Next year, Hamilton's on his flying lap, Q3, he's in like 10th or something, and he's going to shoot up the auto, and we'll just give him a yellow flag, just rogue steward. It's the people taking back the championship.
Fairly certain as well, just talking about the Oz Grand Prix, that tickets go on sale to the Oz Grand Prix this week. I can't remember what date. I think it might be tomorrow. It might be Tuesday, if not the following week. Anyway, but keep your eyes on that if you want to go to the Oz Grand Prix.
Our predictions may be wrong too.
Yeah, well, look, we'll see what happens. But obviously it's going to be interesting. Third race of the year next year. Hopefully everyone will be settled in a little bit. Daniel Ricciardo in that McLaren, of course, will be leading the World Championship by race 3, as we know.
Yep.
Tommy T, Fernando's start. I mean, after it all shook out with the grid place changes, he started in 3rd position, which, as we said, is where Max Verstappen wanted to start. Well and truly in the slipstream of those cars. Of course, Pierre Gasly got promoted as well, but Fernando just had an absolutely stonking start, didn't he?
Outstanding. We knew he would find a way, and he did. He's not. I would not want to be Hamilton or Gasly with him behind me. That's for sure. And yeah, he did really well, but so did Max. Honestly, like it's obviously starting behind in so many of these races is bizarre. I think we need to sort something out because it doesn't seem to be a reward to start on pole at the moment, does it? You end up being the most vulnerable on the track. So, yeah, Fernando was outstanding and he had a great race, and I'm sure we'll get to the rest of that.
What did you think, Campy? Because, in terms of the starting from Gasly too, he managed to have a pretty good one. Not as good as Verstappen it would have seemed. He went through about 6 gears in about 10 metres, it looked like. He just was not here for staying in a gear. But that's the old. I don't want to say old Fernando because he's still here. You know, it's the Fernando we remember. I think, as Brundle put it yesterday in qualifying. But from your point of view, the wily old fox, really just knowing where to stick that car.
Oh, I was up and about. I was yahooing. That is the start that I wanted to see. I want to see Danny Rick up there every week. But if not, I want to see Alonso and Raikkonen kicking goals. And, because it just shows how good they are. It's good to see that he finally got a race. Like, that was on merit, that drive too. Made that one-stop work. You know, started up the front, albeit got lucky a bit. But, hey, sometimes you need that for particularly for some of these back marker teams at times. So, super stoked for Fernando. Drove really well. First stint, he was 10 seconds in front of Gasly after the first stint when he decided to pit, and pretty consistent pace all race, and that's what we know Fernando can do, and he drove the wheels off that thing, comparative to his teammate as well. Excellent drive. It's exactly what Renault
have been looking for, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some punctures before we talk about the individual drivers. It all started with Valtteri Bottas, 33 laps on a medium tyre. Pirelli said that these tyres could only go for 30 laps, of course, and he managed to nurse that car around, not before going into a significant rock patch. There's no gravel traps here at Qatar, the massive rocks, and bringing that back onto the track, no good, really, because that just sort of spelled the beginning of the end for a lot of cars and a lot of, well, for him, unfortunately, too. Valtteri ended up retiring. But, yeah, how did you see it, Campy? Because I didn't necessarily think that the tyres would be an issue again in 2021 like they were in 2020. Of course, you can cast your mind back to Lewis Hamilton's victory with 3 wheels inflated across the line in Silverstone 2020. But for this race, I didn't think we'd see as many, let alone even one.
Look, spewing for Bottas, his race as a whole, I mean, dropping back to 11th, then finally getting his ass in the gear. He passed everyone on track that he needed to pass, went really long. I think the frustrating thing for the teams is, yes, they know that tyres have a life, but there was no indication that those tyres were going to blow. I mean, if you look at his laps beforehand, he was running consistent lap times everywhere. Yes, they say they got 30 laps in them, but they constantly push that limit on where it's going, on how far they can actually push those tyres. I think teams would be frustrated because the tyres you need to know when the tyre's coming to the end of its life. If you're setting consistent lap times up until that point, then you hit a curb and it's all over. That's Pirelli's fault for me. Yes, they're driving him on the limit. I think Valtteri probably should have pitted before the puncture happened because, I mean, he had the 20-second gap on Perez and he was always going to have fresher tyres. So, yeah, he drove an exceptional race and there's some genuine pace in that Merc, even for Valtteri at times. But, yeah, real shame for him. I mean, we saw the two Williams do it. So that's pretty consistent, you know, when you look at when that happened on the track and sort of the laps when it happened, you know, very much the same. So that suggests to me the tyres are pretty, you know, equal across the board. But I think we need more understanding of when these tyres are actually going to drop off and when they get to a point where they don't work. So, because to go over a curb like that when you're running consistent times and then for it to blow, it's not good enough.
Yeah, it looked, I mean, as you said, both Williams, George Russell on lap 51, Latifi lap 52, but also Lando Norris had a puncture, which he ended up being able to come in and pit before he had any significant issues at lap 50. So, I mean, this is what happened at 33 laps on the medium tyre, as I said, for Valtteri Bottas, for these other cars as well, trying to do that one stop and extending, just obviously not working out. Another issue with Valtteri Bottas, though, the retirement, when they'd called that he was coming in to retire the car on his steering wheel, like Daniel Ricciardo had the previous weekend, cool car was the big warning message flashing up on screen. So I hope he doesn't have to take his 47th power unit ahead of the next Grand Prix. But anyway, it's no good for Valtteri. That's sad for him in his last couple of races in that front-running car. Of course, the other thing to note as well is that Charles Leclerc did end up having a crack in his chassis, Campy, out of qualifying. But, of course, changing that over didn't really seem to do anything for his ability or pace around the circuit.
Well, yes and no. I mean, he finished behind his teammate. I think, what did he get, 7th or 8th in the end? You know, and to only finish 2 odd seconds behind his teammate suggests to me that he did find the pace and he probably did get it together for the race. But Ferrari and McLaren, the two comparable, you know, the third, fine for that third spot. They were nowhere compared to some of the other teams. So it just tells me this track has some unique conditions and suits some cars and doesn't suit others. But, yeah, I think Leclerc got it together by changing the chassis in the end. It's a shame. I mean, Ferrari should know when these things happen before, you know, when they're driving them. So, anyway, look, moving on.
We'll see. It's a bit of a car crunching circuit is what it probably ends up being for LaSalle. All right, let's go through our team-by-team analysis, starting at the very back. Haas, Tommy T, Mick Schumacher went for a bit of an exploration just ahead of the pit lane and then coming back on, almost causing a bit of issue for Fernando.
Yeah, I mean, at least it was Fernando and he could avoid it. But yeah, he didn't really safely enter back onto the track, did he? Is what we usually require. No. Just kind of jumped straight back across the entire track to the outside line. Yeah, I'm sure that he'll pull him aside and talk to the young boy, won't he? Alonso, he'll take him under his wing.
Would have been a very quick way for the entire Formula One paddock to then hate Mick Schumacher.
Yeah, just
it was millimeters from hating.
Alonso on for a podium and you take him out. Oh, I would not want to be you, mate.
Would be no good.
Oh, you just don't.
Dad, is that you? Just can't help himself. Alonso Schumacher must crash into other cars.
Oh, well, he's big good riddance. His dad did it to enough people. So
that's what I'm saying. He's just holding back the dark side of the force. Is trying to pull him across. Do you get that reference, Campy? And Mazepin finishing in 18th. Really nowhere. Tommy T, I think he was lapped twice. It's the only thing I really saw of him.
Home Grand Prix not going well.
Yeah, not doing well at all. Williams, as we said, both suffering punctures. Latifi just decided, well, not being able to get that car around. And to be honest, massive thank you to our favourite Canadian to enable Fernando Alonso to get that podium.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying anything may have happened, but certainly any issues they might have had Alpine with that front left tyre were completely removed by not having to put as much load through that. So thanks, Nick. Good guy.
Good guy.
You weren't going to get any points anyway, so you've just done something nice to the whole sport. Good for you. And George Russell, 17th, 1 point. Was holding up Daniel Ricciardo. In terms of how we saw this track, Campy, I think a lot of people said ahead of time it's going to be really difficult to overtake, and then we saw turn one and everyone was pretty much overtaking into there. But in terms of how Russell performed, because he also then had a bit of a scrap, well, not a bit of a scrap, but was also following quite closely with Valtteri Bottas. I mean, the Williams is obviously, as we say, is all focused on next year, but the scrap that they're now having towards the very back of the pack with that Haas and with Alfa Romeo constantly, do you see them really making any progress before the end of the year, or this is just how they are? Who cares? Put it in the bin. Let's worry about 2022 only.
Yeah, look, they've got some pace, but it's only for 4 or 5 laps, and those laps are just annoying where they can run with everybody else. And they're in a bit of a train, so they're punching through and they're holding on to someone in front of them. I mean, Danny Rick's come up against George Russell in the last 3 races and, been behind him and trying to get past him, which has been frustrating to watch because it just holds him up for 5 to 6 laps. Not that he can do it over race distance. Not that George has to yield that position in any way. But, yeah, I mean, look, their race pace dropped off horrendously throughout the race compared to where they were at the start. All their eggs are in the basket for next year. I mean, George, I think he's pretty over that team. Yeah, he spent 2 seasons. This season's been better. 3, sorry. This season's been better than the previous 2. So he's looking forward to jumping into a top car next year. And, it might be a good thing for Danny Rick that he's coming up against him on track this year, so he can get to see how he drives a bit. And, Danny Rick will win the World Championship next year. So it's just a bit of good little intel that he's gathering this year. Yeah. And, but George, he's just one of those dudes. He just sort of pisses me off as a race driver sometimes, Yeah. Just finding the positions that he's in at times.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? I mean, in terms of that battle, though, with Alfa Romeo, Tommy T, I mean, we saw on-track battle between Raikkonen and Latifi going into turn 1, as I said. Epic move by Kimi, but they were very, very closer than Mick and Fernando.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of coming around that corner, though, but bloody fantastic driving from the oldest driver on the grid.
Yep. No, he's we say it every week, don't we, that he's fantastic and we're going to miss him, but yeah, he just throws one move every week and then just kind of goes about the rest of his race, doesn't he? Just kind of has to remind us that he's excellent. Yeah, exactly. Just one move right at the back. No one really knows or cares, and it doesn't really get him any points, but it was good.
He had a mega start.
He did.
Giovinazzi did too. I mean, they started on the softs, so everyone from 15th through to 20th started on the softs so they could get the start. And they swamped up Leclerc and Danny Rick, in 14th and 13th respectively, and, really ruined those guys' races just because, that warm-up lap looked like an absolute shambles getting off the start.
That's a good point.
That didn't help anyone out on the mediums in that sort of, 10 to 15 position. They just couldn't do anything, no space to warm up tyres or try and get any sort of temperature, hence why the back markers jumped up so much and got such ripping starts on the softs. So,
yeah, well, I bet for Alpha though, it's just another case of the Williams kind of pace issue. They're pretty good at the beginning of the race, and then for whatever reason, be it strategy, be it pit stops, be it whatever, they always end up sort of around either between sort of 8th to 15th. And unfortunately for them, for being both out of the points, of course, Giovinazzi, this is the first race that he's had announcing that he's now leaving. You'd hope that he'd be hoping rather that he'd be scoring some points in his last couple of races. Only 2 more to go in a Formula One car. Hopefully we can see that happen, although it's unlikely in terms of a similar potentially kind of circuit in Jeddah in terms of a lot of speed and a lot of higher speed and medium speed corners. But for AlphaTauri, now this to me is probably the biggest disappointment in terms of teams for this race. Tommy T, as we said, Gasly is starting very far up the grid compared to a lot of other cars, and Tsunoda as well, not having a terrible qualifying yesterday, but they played out with Gasly in 11th and Tsunoda in 13th.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think it was the 2-stop strategy that just backfired and just didn't work? Because they committed to a two-stop early as opposed to other teams which kind of adapted and went, you know what, we can fit another stop in. This was the plan from the go. It just didn't yield, did it? And he just ended up in traffic earlier than he probably should have, and then traffic later on and just couldn't clear the people he needed to clear because it is hard to pass around here, as we saw. And then you're also on older tyres twice as opposed to just going on a longer stint once like others were. Starting on that soft tyre was never going to help either, was it, from his position? He was always going to have to put himself back into some mess. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, but he still beat his teammate who had tyre choice and probably should have got higher than that, I would have thought.
Yeah, but I wasn't totally upset with how Yuki was driving though this race, Campy. I mean, the pace-wise was, interesting, but in terms of a couple of overtakes and track battles that he had, it's more mature driving, I think, from Yuki, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. But it helps with a good start too. So, starting in 8th or 7th or wherever he started, I mean, those help the results. So he's up the field a bit more and fighting with some big names. So I couldn't tell you what his actual times were when it looks to race pace, but it seemed he dropped off more than what Gasly did. I mean, Gasly to be running, 2nd and 3rd on lap 1 to drop back to 11th over a race distance, considering, when guys like Ocon who started behind him were able to jump up and have really strong finishes. But Tsunoda's driving well. I think he's finally getting grips to that car. But unfortunately for him, he's got to learn a whole new car next year and a whole new concept and move on. So that's not always the easiest thing to do. If you've been in the sport for a while, it's probably easy for him after 1 year to adapt to something else. But it might be a bit harder for Gasly. Bit of a shame for AlphaTauri, but it's motorsport. You're not going to get it right every weekend.
Yeah, well, look, the other team that will not be totally happy is McLaren because Danny Rick finishing in 12th and Lando Norris finishing in 9th. At one point or another, it looked like Lando could have potentially been challenging for 4th and stayed there, which would have been very good for the points difference in the Constructors' Championship to Ferrari. Wasn't to be, though. Tommy T, do you remember ever seeing Daniel Ricciardo on the broadcast?
As far as I'm aware, he didn't race. I did not see anything.
It's terrible.
Did not see a thing. We kind of heard about it in passing, and that was it, didn't we? We just heard the commentators speak about it. But no, it was like Bigfoot. You just heard rumblings and no one ever saw it.
Well, Danny's first stint was actually really good. He, after his start, lost positions, all that stuff.
Yep.
I mean, he made his way through all the back markers and got I think he was behind Leclerc, and he was sort of 2 or 3 seconds behind Leclerc and matched that pace for 10 to 15 laps. And I thought, geez, this is a really solid stint. He was on the medium, so I thought he'd go a hell of a lot longer than Norris did on the softs. And he was only 10 seconds behind Norris at one stage. I don't know what happened in the pit stop. Whatever happened, he came out and he got overtaken by Vettel and Raikkonen and Giovinazzi.
Right. Yep.
He lost 3 positions straight away, and I think he got caught up in the Alfa Romeos, early committal to a 2-stop. He should have had the gap and he should have got out in front of them. But, I mean, to lose positions like that after one lap on new rubber, I think he had some problems warming up the tyres.
Yep.
But in saying that, the pace deficit towards the end of the race was horrendous.
Yeah.
I think they were really trying for the one stop to try and make that work. And, look, for Ferraris to get in front of Norris, and, look, let's get real. I mean, the Ferraris were, 80-odd seconds behind Lewis Hamilton by the end of it. But, Norris was another 20-odd seconds behind them as well. I mean, he got lapped, and then the gap to Danny Rick was a bit more. So, look, horrendous weekend for McLaren, really. Not good. They really haven't done anything since Russia. I've said Danny Rick was going to get another win. I don't know where it's going to come from at the moment.
It's not.
With two races. Two races to go. I think they've got some gremlins in that car that they're starting to figure out and find out. They've hit a bit of a wall and can't get past that. So,
well, 39.5 points separate McLaren to Ferrari. Now it's almost insurmountable with how the performance has been for the last couple of races. So if you're McLaren, which I kind of think that they're doing now, I think you'd be just turning your attention to 2022. Year. They're not in any danger of losing that fourth position. Of course, third would be nice, but fourth is currently Alpine on 137 and AlphaTauri 112. So they'll be sitting comfortably there at least for the rest of the season. Just disappointing that, of course, you've had a win in Monaco, a potential win in Russia, and completely fallen in the bin. It is not how Michael Italiano would have wanted to spend his birthday yesterday. So big shame for him. Let's keep going. Aston Martin, though, almost worth saying that this is 1 in 472 races where Lance Stroll just did the thing that he normally does when he gets a result, and that's just sort of keeping to himself and doing the opposite of other people, Tommy T.
There's no cars around him. He can't really cause trouble or nothing can go wrong. No, he was fine. Again, like, we never see anything of those drivers, do we? We saw nothing really on track. But he was fine. I think, about time we got that result. That car was definitely good enough this weekend. I think Vettel was probably very unlucky just with his position and his start. Yeah. Like he was just, again, kind of like Gasly, just got stuck in the worst positions and just couldn't break out of it. But to get back for a point's good for Vettel. But yeah, Stroll was just right place, right time, capitalise on his opportunities. I think it's exactly what you expect, minimum, kind of from a driver with those opportunities on a race weekend.
Yeah, I mean, well, Seb started 7th, didn't he, and ended up going very wide into turn 1, which is what put him all the way back, which was no good, unfortunately, for him. But, I mean, from the campus's point of view, Campy, they wouldn't be totally happy. Well, they would be fairly okay with that performance, I suppose, although they're sitting in 7th and 77 points.
I think this is probably Stroll's best result for the year, right? He hasn't done any better than 6, has he? So good on him for that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But again, if you look at our summation of their year on that team radio podcast it did, again, Stroll started outside the top 10, got tyre choice, and that's how he's able to beat his teammate because his teammate started on the softs, not the strategy he wanted in order to move up the grid. So, but he made it work too. So, I mean, starting on that optimum tyre is genuinely a pace gap when you start on that optimum tyre for the race. So, I mean, he would have been spewing that he only, to finish that close behind Ocon. He would have been hunting for that position in the last few laps, but wasn't to be, but good result for Stroll. He needs to do that more often than what he's doing. What's that, 1 in 21 races this year? So
Yeah, not wrong. 1 in 21. Well, look,
where did he qualify?
Oh, who knows? I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't
Somewhere.
remember, yeah.
Ferrari. Let's talk about Ferrari. Carlos Sainz in 7th and Charles Leclerc in 8th, as you said. Campy, I mean, look, they're building that gap, aren't they, from McLaren in that third position. I mean, as you said, Charles Leclerc did end up doing pretty okay with that new chassis. Carlos Sainz in 7th, bit of no man's land, had some interesting battles towards the beginning of the race, but ended up just sort of, again, being in no man's land. Ferrari as a whole, though, Tommy T, would be pretty happy with how the end of this year has gone.
Yeah, it's really strong to the end of the year, and hopefully they haven't just capitalised on this year and this car and they've actually been focusing on next year, because that would be the most Ferrari thing ever, wouldn't it? Would be to win third in the Constructors and then have a useless car next year. Yep. Just focusing on the wrong thing. But I think it's really strong to see Sainz. I think he was the dominant driver this weekend for sure. I mean, we know that Leclerc had some trouble with his chassis, so that's fair enough. But I think Sainz is actually showing himself and really getting to the front of that team. We know the team love him. Not that they don't love Leclerc, but they really appreciate Sainz and his involvement and how much effort he puts in to improve that car and every week. So I think they've got a great driver lineup. I'm excited to see kind of that dynamic play out, and I think that'll be one to watch next year in a more competitive car from the start of the year, hopefully.
Yeah, good point, Campy. In terms of 2022 and beyond, as we've sort of asked the question a couple of times, who is the lead driver in that car? I don't think there is one. I think they're both equally as good as each other, which is an interesting place to be. It also, to me, I think, or specifically when it comes to Carlos Sainz's side of the garage, he's very good at playing a team game. He's not as, independent as other people have been, which is what we've saw obviously with that car Lando thing at McLaren. He obviously was outperforming Lando hands down, no question. But for Ferrari, I mean, next year, obviously, they'll be hoping for a world championship, but these guys are signed for a couple of years. This is them for the first time actually investing properly into two drivers, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, for me, Carlos takes the number one pick. I don't think he's there yet, the number one driver in the team. But for me, he will take that team by the scruff of the neck and just and direct it how he wants it and leave Leclerc behind him. But yeah, it's clear he's a good guy off track in the sense that he just knows how to play the dynamics between people within the garage and with Leclerc too. And he's not going to be he's not a divisive figure, which is probably a good thing for Ferrari historically. So, yeah, he's my pick for it. I think they'll be hoping for a world championship next year, but, I mean, it's probably a bit like, for me, their comparative team is McLaren, and McLaren will struggle because they are a customer team. Ferrari, they may get it right. But, I mean, there's still a massive gap to the Red Bull and the Mercedes with the engines and car. That's what happens when you stuff up a whole year of Formula One. I mean, look at the drop-off. They were right there with Mercedes 3 years ago, and they stuff up 1 year, and look where they are. They're back, mid-pack, struggling to even get their hands on 5th and 6th at some tracks. So, look, I think the organisation's got a big uphill battle to get back on par with it. But, hey, new regulations, new chassis, new design philosophies, I think, who better suited to get it done than Ferrari for next year.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Alpine, though, as we mentioned, bloody good weekend for them. They needed a bit of a result like this to jump AlphaTauri and sort of stay there. Although it's have to be said that AlphaTauri's points haul has predominantly just been Pierre Gasly outperforming that car for all year. Certainly outqualified every single race against his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. But yeah, for Fernando in third and Ocon in fifth, I know that Fernando sent it through Alpine team wall back to Fernando, defend like a lion. And I was like, oh, Fernando's back. I love it. So good to hear. Although he looks like a lion with his hair. And in the opening credits, the mane of Fernando Alonso, it's I always wonder how he fits it into that helmet. But for them, fantastic weekend. I don't know which team principal was at the track this weekend out of the 5 of them, but I'm sure the one that was there was very happy indeed, Tommy T.
Yes, I'm sure they were. No, outstanding result for them. I think that's the best they could have hoped for, really. Making a late charge. And we saw this when Daniel was at that team when it was formerly named. What was it called, Campy, before?
Renault.
That's right.
Who used to drive for Renault before Danny Rick?
Hulk?
Hulkenberg.
No, Carlos. Setting you up for 2 in a row.
Right. Carlos.
He said
so funny with that. It was so funny with that interview with Danny Rick. They're like, "What's your boss like?" He's like, "He's American."
Good summary.
The best.
Gets it. But no, we saw Alpine / Renault back in the time have these random races where just everything came together, and that car, that unique car, like we kind of talked about yesterday, with its own power unit that no one else has and its own unique design, just worked. And this was one of those tracks, and Fernando was on it all weekend. And it's not surprising to see that he got a result because he's a feisty old wily dog, lion, whatever you're calling him, fox, whatever animals we're associating with him.
For the moment.
Yeah, exactly. But
Spanish Jesus.
And
he has returned.
To Ocon's credit as well, he milked the best out of that car as well.
Yeah, and I think from the defending point of view, Campy, it's not like Hungary where he was really going to put up any kind of defense against Perez, but like has to be hats off to Esteban because the couple of moves that he did on that one lap that he had were very good. Like it genuinely caused Sergio to slow down a little bit.
Yep.
Of course, as it played out, the VSC meant that, Fernando was able to hold that position. And if we didn't have Red Bull making that strategy call to pull in Perez, then Fernando wouldn't have been in the opportunity that he was in. So, I mean, it was their kind of merit, but also an opportunity. And as you said, Tommy T, if the Alpine, the Renault of old, they are very good at picking up pieces when something happens in front of them. And it was fantastic in this instance where, in fact, actually, looking up and down the grid, this is really the only team that was able to use their second driver in the grid and how it was in terms of positions to help the thing is, the first driver.
The Renault was always good on tyres, wasn't it? That was the one thing that we'd always see. They could always go long and get extra out compared to every other team. So, I mean, maybe that played into it as well and let them do that one stop, and Fernando was able to hang on to those tyres. The VSC definitely helped, but we can't forget that they were always good on tyres, and that was one thing about this car.
Yeah, I'm very happy for them, Campy. I know that you weren't totally against the French yesterday as a result of the rugby, but for this result, you got to be pretty stoked for them.
Oh, look, I'm stoked for Fernando Alonso, number one. Couldn't really care about Ocon. Like, most drivers are going to get a top 5 or top 6 result this year, if you look across the grid, except for the duds, So we expect these guys to get some podiums. And, I mean, for the organisation, I mean, they got to win this year, albeit not where they wanted to get the win, how they got the win, but they won it. I mean, it's their first podium since then. And hopefully they're probably looking for another podium for the end of the year, just how well their car is suited to these Middle Eastern tracks. So good for them. I couldn't care if they were French or not. I'm stoked for Alonso.
Yeah,
that guy's still got it, and
he does.
I campaigned it for years, and you guys were against me. And
we were.
I don't remember that. Right. I think we were saying how good Alonso was. You were saying he's crap.
Sometimes, Tommy, we just need to admit where we were wrong, and we were wrong.
We were wrong.
But it's one of these comebacks that has worked, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't always work.
Hey? Doesn't always work. But I remember, there was a pre-season testing where Fernando Alonso just showed up as a fan just to check it out. And the whole media pack, all they were doing was talking to Fernando Alonso. Wasn't even racing, wasn't on track. Mazepin and Schumacher don't get that amount of attention, being some of the drivers on the grid at times. So much the sport loves him, and he is well liked across the sport. Has been a pretty divisive character at times, but with a bit of age, he's aged finely, in my opinion, like a wine, and gets better and better as he goes on. And the fans love him. He's a bit like a Kimi Räikkönen factor now.
Yeah.
So.
A good weekend for Oscar Piastri to be in work experience at Alpine. Very, very good. But I'm stoked for Fernando as well. I think obviously had a lot of bad luck. I mean, he has caused some of that bad luck himself in previous years, but for between 2014 and 2021, a podium is a long time coming, and good on him, because he bloody deserves it, and he does great things for this sport. So more power to him. Yep. Red Bull, though, as I mentioned, Sergio Perez, there was kind of a dud strategy call, I think, from Red Bull, although if they were protecting tyres, that would make sense considering what happened to other people in the field. But a mega drive by Sergio Perez, it has to be said, in terms of how he was making those passes coming up through the field. At one point, he was the only car that was actually making any moves at all towards the front. Yep. He ended up in fourth, Max Verstappen in second. Campy, in terms of Red Bull's overall weekend, good damage limitation, I would say, for them. That's their favourite thing to be said at the moment, is damage limitation. It's like, it's not damage, guys. You're all going towards the front. You're still happening. Everyone's happy. Don't worry about it. Relax, Karen. But for Perez, though, Campy, your thoughts on his drive, and then how he sort of was disappointed by being pulled in?
Yeah, I think he should have been disappointed by being pulled in, but I can understand why they made that call. He was the only guy on track at times making moves, but I think if Valtteri didn't get that puncture, Valtteri had shored up that third position no matter what. So I think for him that would be a frustrating. Looking back on the race, that'd be frustrating how much time he actually lost to Bottas because of the early pit stop made by Red Bull. So I think the team will be scratching their head on how to get that better for next weekend. But yeah, I mean, good result for them. Absolute damage limitation. I mean, Max took the fastest lap off Lewis, which I thought was interesting because Lewis was just on a charge the whole race, and Max had nothing for him. What is it now? 8 points in the championship. So it's a race win with the fastest lap. I think I don't want to see fastest laps, particularly 2 races to go. If we even get 2 races, by the way, we might get a week out and the FIA might just cancel this Jeddah race because the track's not finished. I don't know enough about where we're up to, but you guys seem to tell me we still don't have asphalt down, which is bloody scary 2 weeks into the race. I know asphalt is the last thing to go on, and it's a bit like the last cone of paint you put on a house. Goes on pretty easy, but I mean, jeez.
Love it. Love it.
Set you guys up every time.
It's so good. Who knows what Jeddah even looks like? There are just photos coming out in random periods. I'm sure, you'd hope by this point, by at least tomorrow, Tuesday the 23rd of November, they have it all together. So at least the tarmac has a week to sit, to settle in if it needs it. And they can put some other kind of race cars over the top of the surface, even if it's just a fleet of Hertz vehicles. They'll kind of need to do something. Yeah, that was Turkey or Portugal last year, wherever it was, that decided to resurface just before the track. It's before the race. And between practice and qualifying, they took all these rental cars and drove it around all night. It's not the same. Anyway, I don't know how we got there, but for Verstappen's point of view, though, Tommy T, that sort of damage under the front wing potentially caused a bit of issues very early on, and there was about that 7-8 second gap that he just couldn't close on Lewis. Yeah,
surprised they didn't actually do a front wing change when he came in, but obviously they just felt like that would be too detrimental to his race time, and he just had nothing, did he? He was just consistently that little bit behind on his race pace. He couldn't close the gap to Lewis. And I suppose at some point he just felt, you know what, second is all we can get, and we just need to make sure we get second with the fastest lap. And that's what they did. So I think you're fine with that, especially from where he had to start from. His start was incredible. Yeah. He nailed that to the point where I thought he was going to ride himself off and be taken out. I thought he was that kind of kamikaze about it potentially, but he made it stick when Alonso tried to shut the door on him. Went onto the asphalt, or what was it, the AstroTurf, and came back. But yeah, I think that was the best they could do. They did not have the pace for that Mercedes compared to that Mercedes this week. So second's good with the fastest lap.
Certainly wouldn't have helped Fernando. I forgot Fernando closing the door, slamming the door. It wasn't even a close. He was like, nope, bye, which was bloody fantastic to see. But Campy, do you believe this front wing damage issue, or do you just think that Hamilton's pace is just so far outstrips Max and that Red Bull?
I think after turn 1 or lap 1, Hamilton turned the engine down. He was in safe mode for the rest of the race. Do not use any more of that engine than he absolutely has to. Front wing damage or not, just they got second. And that's where Max and Lewis, if nothing happens on track, it's where they're going to finish. And it has been like that for the last, 5 or 6 laps now, 5 or 6 races, where it's Verstappen winning, Hamilton's always going to come second, and vice versa. So we're now in this precarious, position where if Hamilton wants to win the championship, he has to win both races if Max is going to come second. Where Max only has to win one more and
seal it.
I mean, that is relying on other factors to win the world championship. So it'll be interesting. Do I think Mercedes will win the last 4 races to take the championship? Well, on current pace, absolutely. I think they'll just looking how the track sort of played out, I think they'll dominate Jeddah if we get it. Abu Dhabi's the only one that could be interesting. It's traditionally been a Mercedes track, but we know how much difference Red Bull, the gains they've made this year in comparisons. Past results don't really matter at this time. So Mercedes got to get everything right. They're totally capable of it. I think Lewis will probably do it, which is unfortunate. All the Discord chat last night was going off about how the FIA's given the race to Lewis already. It was calm down. It was only a week ago that Lewis got a 25-place grid penalty for not much, disqualified from qualifying, start at the back of the grid. So look, Yeah, it's going to be awesome to watch. We need to get.
I love that you're
need to enjoy it.
I love that you're that invested in Mercedes that you're going to think they're going to win the next 4 races and there's only 2 races left.
No, I mean, like they've won the last 2. Do they go on to win? Last
I got
2?
you, man.
So they come home on an absolute tear, and we haven't seen them do that this year at any stage. So. Look, it's going to be a great couple of weeks, isn't it?
Well, let's talk very quickly about Lewis Hamilton then, because firstly, the one camera view that I did enjoy this weekend was the in-car camera view. Of course, under lights, you can see their eyes. The intensity and focus of Lewis Hamilton's face, pretty phenomenal to watch, of course. But for him, he'd be very happy that he just sailed out in front and had that decent gap because... Look, I wanted to go, I keep saying this, I wanted to go to the last lap of the last race. So we've got two more races to go. I hope that it sits how it sits for the next race. And then it comes down to, well, not even. If we can have a win by Max and a second fastest lap with Lewis and we can come into equal points at somehow, I'm sure someone's going to say, no, James, that mathematically doesn't make sense, because I'm terrible at math.
Lewis will need to win with the fastest lap. And Verstappen needs to come second.
There you go. Excellent. Good. Well, if that can happen, that'd be good. Equal points right down to the wire, because that would the jeopardy of the pit stops, though, and Red Bull 2.1 second pit stop with no machinery or no automation, I should say, interaction. Whew.
Yeah.
That incredible job by those guys, and that deserves a mention, absolutely. But yeah, for Mercedes, though, sad for Valtteri, of course. Not good for the Constructors' Championship point struggle in that instance, but for Hamilton, he needs this win. And, I think all 3 of us probably want Max Verstappen to win this championship, don't we? It's just how he does it. That's probably key.
So hard, isn't it?
The problem is if Lewis wins next weekend or next race in Jeddah and the points are tied going in the last race, if Lewis comes second and Max wins, that means Max wins because of Spa. And I can't remember where Hamilton finished that day.
It was like 4 or 5 points different. They ended up.
I think he qualified 8th or something, so he's still got a couple of points, but Max got 12.5. So I mean, the difference in there is what 8 points or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. 10 points. Someone can fact check us and write us down in Discord. That'd be great. But I don't want that race to be the deciding factor. If that's the deciding factor,
Hamilton was third. Verstappen was first, Hamilton was third, 12.5 points and 7.5 points. So
5 points.
That's how it played out. Yeah, it's a 5-point issue.
Okay.
So you wanted to win by more than 5. No,
that negates it then, doesn't it? So
almost. It almost does.
It almost does. So interesting to see what will happen.
At least in that race, Nikita Mazepin got the fastest lap. At least no one got a fastest lap.
Yeah, exactly.
Point for Spa.
Imagine if you did.
Awarded. Favorite point awarded.
Do you get a half point for
someone
that?
who was out of points? Yeah, half point
to
0. They rounded down. Anyway, look, I think it's all good. You're right. It's going to be an interesting next 2 races, that's for sure. Well, that is our team by team analysis. Let's get into fantasy league, fantasy team names. I looked at this last night, so my apologies if you've updated it after the race. I haven't yet seen it. Here we go. Totally winging it, Raymond M. While my Qatar gently weeps, James M.
Oh, very good.
I'm going to touch Lewis's rear, Steen N. Doa, a deer, a female deer, Josh L. Here we go. Campy's having a fiddle on the roof, Byron H. Qatar Hero 2021, Lydia S. It's very good.
Do you like that one?
He likes that one.
Oh, Qatar. I like it.
That might be the on Lydia. I think you've had actually some of the best all year, Lydia. So you might be in for the win here.
Yeah.
This is from Karim H. I look in every Navara hoping to find Campy in it.
That's so good.
Tears and Mazepin, James N. Technically troubled Tommy, Mason C. Has anyone seen that last bolt? Harrison Z. Thank you to you for updating those at some point. Now, here's good news. Here's very, very good news. In fact, the best news of the weekend.
How the
Campy.
fuck did you jump that much?
Campy 40th. Tommy, you are now last.
Dinkin'.
And it's good news. You're in 58th and I'm in 44th. I am 4 places away from you, Thomas J. Camp. And you know what? I'm bloody coming for
I
you,
hope
mate.
he wins it,
bloody
to
take
be
you.
honest. Just to shut you up.
If the problem is if I go and change it now,
You'll lose.
I will lose. I've just got to leave it and not because I still haven't. I need to use a Mega Driver too. I still haven't used it.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm probably not going to win unless you use it on Lewis or Max and one of them
Crash out.
That would be the podcaster's pox version instead of commentator's curse of you ruining a championship. So maybe you should mega Lewis on the last race. But yeah, it's very good. I was very happy this morning to read that's how it lies out. But it's very good. Well, look, massive thank you to you boys for getting up early and doing this, and a massive thank you to you for watching and listening, of course. Now, a couple of things you can do to help support the show. Firstly, you can grab some merchandise from our website. We ship all over the world. The link to that is in the description below. You can find us on YouTube as well, Instagram too, as well as TikTok, and leave us a rating and review, and we'll read out the reviews each race review podcast that we do. Now, we are going to Jeddah in a fortnight's time. Hopefully the track exists. But next week will be a very, very good week for this podcast. We may or may not have the episode live on Monday, but next week you will have a interview with Josh Revel, which will be bloody fantastic to hear. Josh Revel, YouTube content creator, does amazing stuff. If my recent one that I enjoyed was him talking about groundskeeper Duresta. So go and check that out. Very, very good indeed.
His best one's that behaviour Ragoonathan dude. It's had like about 5 million views. I mean, it's absolutely priceless.
Well, we can't wait to have him on the podcast. Massive thank you to you for listening, and we'll see you in a week's time with our chat with Josh Revel.
No!